Atlanta United Fan TV. It is not the result that we wanted, of course. We don't get the shield. And a pretty shocking performance overall. I mean, if it's an introduction to Atlanta sports in general, I guess here it is.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up a South Carolina Gamecock, so I'm kind of numb to disappointment at this point. Yeah. But, man, where to begin with that catastrophe, huh? I think you can look back on this season as a whole and kind of point out a whole lot of different places where, you know, the results ended up, you know, with this. Today was just shambolic, though, all the way around. The defending at the get-go, Lorenowitz was poor. McCann was poor, but I didn't really expect anything less. But, you know, as a whole, the defense was out to sea and had no organization from the get-go. You know, the attack didn't flow. It was a game of inches in some points in time. Joseph hits the post in a place that I expect him to score. I mean, he's one-on-one with the keeper and has his right foot and dinks it off the outside of the post. You know, 4 or 5 inches one way, he's fine. You know, then in the second half, you have a shot go off the underside of the crossbar that, you know, a couple inches one way or the other, it could have gone across the line. You have a goal. You have Joseph get called offside in the build-up to Julian Gressel goal. I mean, and he was offside. I mean, it was like 3 inches of his foot, but it's still offside by the rule. Mind you, MLS, from what I understand, is supposed to the linesmen are supposed to keep their flags down, and they're supposed to go back to VAR to pick that up afterwards, but they didn't. So unfortunately, that didn't have a chance. But I mean, he was offside anyway, so it didn't matter. Guzan was poor. The 4th goal, he should save that. I'm sorry. Like, yeah, it was a nice hit, but it's his near post. There's a very small space. He saw it coming the whole way. I mean, any keeper who knows what they're doing should see and understand, okay, this guy has a few things he's going to do. He's going to probably hit it on the full, and he got beat at his near post. And honestly, it's something that happens a lot to him, and it's kind of frustrating for, I mean, I would say a keeper of his quality. He's better than most in Major League Soccer, but, I mean, hell, if we're spending potentially $17 million on someone, I wish we could go out and find someone who might be a little bit more consistent with their feet and their saves. But, I mean, again, you got to look at the level that Atlanta United are at. You're not going to be getting keepers that are either that are on their way up and playing great unless you go someone really young, you know, like a Stefan, but you're not going to get him from Columbus. And you're going to get someone who's old, you know. But, you know, God, there's just so much about that game. It was just frustrating. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair on Guzan's goal, yes, he shouldn't be beat near post, but
yeah, the had space for days.
And it was the death knell already with the 3rd goal. I think the team was already deflated. They were pushing up in hopes of a miracle.
Everything was getting thrown forward, so you can't really take too much. I mean, that final scoreline is probably accurate in that we played very poorly. But, I mean, there were going to be goals at the end because you're pushing forward trying to get goals because you know you have to get a win. Orlando had a couple chances from what we saw, had a goal ruled offside, had a penalty save, but, you know, Red Bull have been, you know, deadly efficient all season, more so than Atlanta United. They've had that killer instinct from their whole team where they can take that goal, take that chance they need, and then shut teams out. And on the whole, Atlanta United, not very good defensively. They've been decent on the road all season, but when they play against teams who are somewhat decent or if they're off their game, they get, you know, absolutely wiped. I don't know. I really don't know. Not to make excuses, but the pitch was terrible. They were playing in a cow pasture, and a lot of people were very upset because passes were falling short and there wasn't that speed there. And it's like, look, yeah, did it have an effect on the play? Absolutely. Those guys didn't figure out how to play football overnight. And a lot of passes just don't suddenly come up short because they're hitting them softly. No, the pitch was terrible. Everything was bobbling. You know, kind of the same thing that happened with the D.C. game in D.C. where they didn't water their pitch. They didn't care. They wanted it to be shite because teams that play with the ball and have a passing game like Atlanta United want a slick, quick surface. So that's going to mess them up. But, I mean, that's gamesmanship. That happens everywhere. There's no foul play there. I mean, Atlanta, if you're a good team, you find a way to cope with that. They did not do that. They did not cope with it. They couldn't figure out what they wanted to do at any point in the game. I mean, it was just poor.
Yeah. Big miss, of course, is Miggy, and then Tito, you know, short of fitness, and then he gets a little bit of a run out. I mean, there's that as excuses, of course. And then you have, of course, also, you know, the big elephant in the room, Tata Martino, announcing he's leaving at the end of the season. And so do you think that had an effect on the team at all?
I don't know. I was hoping it maybe had a positive response, but clearly it did not. I don't know, though. The team, maybe they were trying too hard. People thought they were focused, but it just wasn't a good game. I mean, there was no organization from the get-go. You could tell that. No one had any idea who was marking who. Larry had a howler. That was probably his worst game he's ever played for Atlanta United, if I'm being honest. You know, having that goal scored that quickly into the game, that kind of throws everything out the window. Bello apparently had a knock, which is why he wasn't in the 18, which is disappointing because I never want to see McCann start again. I don't think he's very good. I don't think he offers anything. And he ended up going off hurt, and I don't wish injury on anyone, but, I mean, it wasn't like he was doing anything. I thought he was culpable on both of the first 2 goals, not closing anyone down. It was just poor all over. I mean, I think the thing that I would take away from this game is, in a sense, it's a real microcosm of the whole season, because if you look back on the 34 games, Atlanta United, despite getting 69 points, despite setting all these records, never really played up to their potential. I thought that too many times they didn't finish games the way they should have, or they didn't put away teams the way they should have, or they just struggled in situations that made no sense against poor opposition, especially at home. They've been relatively good on the road all season, but, I mean, this team could have easily had 75, 80 points without even worrying about it, and it wouldn't have even been a problem today. They would have had it in the bag already, but they played poorly. And, Joseph Martinez, who's one of the best players on the team, he, minus the penalties today, has been poor since he broke the record against Orlando. He has been poor. He had 2 chances today before he got the penalty that he absolutely should have put away. And one of them was very reminiscent to last week, where he can't get it out of his feet, hits it right at the keeper, and then goes down. And it's just like, when you're struggling for form, sometimes you want to take too many touches to make sure that you get that right touch. And right now, maybe it's just mental for him. Maybe that penalty will help, but he just has been struggling, because he had a chance in the first half that if he puts that away, you go in 2-1 down at halftime, that's not that bad. You can deal with that. But he's not been, finishing those chances. Hopefully you have Miggy coming back for the playoffs, which would be ideal. But right now, I mean, finishing second to put a positive spin on things, you might get a decent draw out of things. NYCFC did win today, but on the whole, they've been in a pretty poor run of form. I mean, I think that they could be had in the bins, especially if they're chasing goals. You could end up with a Philadelphia. DC is going to end up finishing, I want to say, 4th, I believe. So, I mean, you won't get Columbus because they're going to finish 6th. So that'll the winner of that game, and if they beat NYCFC, then they'll get Red Bull, and then we'll be stuck with probably DC United, which is not ideal. But if you figure out a way that you dodge DC United and they end up playing Red Bull, then yeah, do you want to win silverware? Absolutely. If we were winning, I'd be gushing about it right now. But to try to be somewhat positive, I mean, you might get a decent draw. But even if you do, I don't have any confidence in this team right now to win anything in the playoffs. I mean, if you had to ask me right now what would happen, depending on who they draw, I mean, if they got like a Philadelphia, maybe they go through. I mean, I think they could go through against that team, but Philadelphia is still a decent team. If they get DC in that first round, I don't see us going through. NYCFC, I think we could, but I mean, we're not going to beat Red Bulls if it gets to the 2 legs of the conference finals. It's just not going to happen. They're too efficient. They have that killer edge. We're too sloppy. There's no organization. There's no all the good things about the way this team plays is not there right now. And I don't know what happened. Maybe Tata's mind has been focused in other places. I'm not going to be upset with him because he's done so much for this team, but right now you wish there was a manager that maybe had some different ideas that could organize a team effectively, because in big games, he fails at that miserably. And that's not something that's just a case here. It's something that he's had a problem with over his entire career. So we'll see. I mean, at the end of the day, Atlanta United 69 points, second all-time in points for a season, tied with Toronto. Obviously, Red Bull set the record today. In your second season, Joseph Martinez got his 50th goal today for the club in 2 seasons. You're in the CONCACAF Champions League next year. Mind you, that could be a bad thing because, as we saw at Toronto this year, they struggled after beginning the season so early. We'll see. I mean, this team has high expectations, has big aspirations. They want to win things. I think they will. There's too much good that's happening right now. There's more stuff we'll talk about in 5 Stripe Weekly this week. But, they're in a good place, and Tata's done a lot for this team to get them there. The expectation to win, obviously, it's there when you spend the amount of money that Atlanta United is. And if you continue to spend money and not win, then, yeah, you have an issue. But there's a lot that's going good for the club right now. And, yeah, I'd have liked to have won today because I think that with more investment in the league and as the league gets better and the teams get better, I think Supporter Shield will start meaning more because it only means as much as the fans want it to mean. And I think Atlanta United fans wanted to win it. I wanted to win it. It would have been great, but it didn't happen. So, it's not going to be the first time that we're going to be disappointed after a game at the end of the season going, what happened? Why did it happen this way? That's football. It happens to everyone. I mean, imagine being me as a Manchester United fan when City win the league on that Aguero BS, and I'm sitting here thinking we're 10 seconds away from winning the league, and I'm just like, yes! And then that goes in, and I'm just like, what the hell just happened? So football's, bloody hell. It's a crazy game. But, it is what it is. And I guess on one final note, it's a bit depressing, but I just want to say that if you haven't, seen what happened with Leicester City, my thoughts are absolutely with them. When you see what happens with that, games like this don't really mean a shit because they lost an owner who did so much for the sport, because a guy who does that with Leicester City and shows that any fan of any club can dream to do amazing things, the world lost a great person in football. Not just football, but the world in general. But so my thoughts are with them, and it really makes today really kind of pale in perspective. But anyway, we'll see what happens in the playoffs.
Well said, man. Thank you. Thank you so much.